Hi, this is Chris Converse, and in this episode, we'll take a look at vertically centering text within a parent element. While there are a few ways you can do this, either using margin and padding or flex display properties, one of the most efficient ways is to use the table display properties in CSS, allowing us to take advantage of a table cell without the rigid and extraneous HTML of an actual table. So if you'd like to follow along with me, download the exercise files, and let's begin by opening index.html in a text editor. Now, once you have the HTML file open, you'll see up in the heading area here, we have a link to style.css, which will open in a few minutes. And inside the body area, we have a main article element. And then here we have an aside. Now it's the aside element here where I want to center vertically these two paragraph elements. Now to take a look at the layout so far, you can take index.html and open this up in a browser. And then once in the browser, you'll see the aside element here. We can see Visit Beautiful Amsterdam, the two paragraph elements that are showing here, and I've gone ahead and put in a background image. So now in order to center these and to make use of the table display properties, we do need to have one additional HTML element in place. So inside of the aside in the HTML, let's come in here and put both of these paragraph elements inside of a div tag. So let's come in here and add a less than sign and add a div tag before the first paragraph element. Next, I'll indent these. And then after the paragraph elements, let's end the div tag. And so now with our HTML modified, let's save the HTML. Let's go back to the exercise files. Let's find style.css and let's open this in our text editor. Once inside, let's scroll down. And the first thing I'd like to do is finish styling the text inside of the aside. So down here, I have a rule that's targeting the paragraph inside of the aside. So I'll come in here and copy that. Let's add a few lines. Let's paste that on the next line before the media query. And let's change the P to P colon last of type. So now I'm going to target the last paragraph element inside of the aside. And let's come in here and change a few properties. First, let's come in here and change font size. We're going to set the font size to 2.3 ems. Next line, we're going to set the letter spacing. We're going to set this to 14 pixels. And then finally, we're going to set the margin to -6 pixels on the top. So it'll be a little bit closer to the paragraph element before it. Then a space, then 0 for the right, 0 for the bottom, and 0 for the left. With these in place, I'll hit save, reload in the browser. And now we can see those new type properties taking effect. So now let's go back to the CSS. And what we're going to do is we're going to come into the aside element here, and we need to set a display type on here. So after the font family, let's hit a return. Let's set the display type to a table. So display colon table semicolon. So now the browser is going to treat that aside as if it were an HTML table. Let's scroll down. After the aside, let's hit a return. Now let's target the div element that's inside of the aside. So we'll type aside space div, another space, put in our brackets, and then here we're going to set a display property to table-cell, then a semicolon. And now that this has table cell display properties, we can now use CSS properties that we would normally only use for an HTML table. So the property I want to set here is going to be vertical align. So vertical dash align, colon space. We're going to set that value to middle, then a semicolon. Now if we hit save and go back to the browser, we'll now see that the type is now centered within that aside element. So back to the CSS, next line. Let's choose text align. Let's set that to center, then a return, and now let's just set a few padding properties. So the padding now is going to be assigned to the div element. So we're going to set 0 padding on the top and the bottom, then a space, and then just 10 pixels on the right and the left. So that we always have a little bit of space on the right and the left between the text inside of the div and the overall aside. So now with these properties in place, let's go back to the browser. I'm going to come in here and resize this a little bit. Since we are using table display type properties, we should come in here and set some responsive rules as well. So if we scroll down in the CSS, I've already set up a media query here targeting a max width of 600. So let's come in here and just make a few type changes inside of the aside when we're under 600 pixels. So the first rule is going to target the paragraph elements inside of the div, inside of the aside. So we'll type aside, space div, space p, put in our brackets. Let's come in here and change the font size. We're going to set this to 1.1 ems. We can save that. We can see the effect in the browser. And then on the next line, we'll target the last of type paragraph element. So aside, space div, space p, colon, last of type. Put in our brackets. We're going to make a few changes here. First, we'll set the font size. We'll set this to 1.8 ems. I'll come in here and format this a little bit, put these on separate lines. Next, we're going to target margin top. We're going to reset this to -2 pixels. And then finally, we'll come in here and reset letter spacing to 7 pixels. So now with these in place, save your CSS, go back to the browser, hit reload. Now when we resize the browser, all of our type changes will take effect when we get under 600 pixels. We won't invoke any horizontal scrolling, and we'll always have our type centered regardless of the width of the browser. So in this episode, we've learned to assign table display properties to HTML elements in order to take advantage of a browser's table rendering capabilities without using the full HTML table markup. And so with that, I'll conclude this episode. And as always, thanks for watching.